Welcome to Your Dairy Checkoff Podcast from Dairy Management, Inc., where dairy checkoff leaders and farmers share real stories, strategies, and insights that grow sales and build trust for U.S. dairy. Let's get started.
Welcome to another edition of the Your Dairy Checkoff Podcast. I'm Scott Wallen with Dairy Management Incorporated, and today I'm going to step aside and allow two of our dairy checkoff leaders to lead the conversation. We've got Marilyn Hershey, who is a Pennsylvania dairy farmer and chair of Dairy Management Incorporated, and Barb O'Brien. She is president and CEO of Dairy Management, Inc. And together, they're going to look back at some of the wins of 2025 while discussing some of the strategies that are in place for the new year that are designed to grow sales and build trust of U.S. dairy. I hope you enjoy the conversation.
Well, welcome, Barb, and we get to sit down and have a nice conversation. We closed out 2025. So anytime close out a year, you think about, reflect on that year. So when you look back, what are some of the accomplishments that you think about?
I would say 2025 was a pretty pivotal year. Stepping way back from checkoff, even just thinking broadly about the dynamics in the industry, it's hard to believe given where we are today. But think back a year and the fact that traditional signals, supply-demand signals, were not really in play, right? We had an unprecedented shortfall in heifers. Some real limitation in herd size. It had an inevitable effect on pricing. Fast forward 6 months and then 12 months, and the dynamics changed a ton. So it's really within that context, I think about our business, the work we've been doing to drive short-term sales. I would say the most significant shift I think we saw happen this year was the shift in consumer behavior. The focus on good nutrition, and dairies win there. Fixation with protein. We are so well positioned, and I think that really came through as we looked at the data in 2025. The other thing I'll point out is the continued importance of exports. Record high, and we continue to see record high cheese sales in global markets, and that has been a gift as we continue to look at how domestic and global balance each other out.
Well, it is, and interesting too with the volatility that we see with our export market, and that they're still able to find those unique markets and make sure that dairy is still leaving the borders as we need it to, right?
I think that's part of the benefit of what we've seen U.S. DEC do over the last couple of years, become much more intentional in looking at a worldwide plan. We're not reliant on a single region. They've really diversified, prioritized, and are traveling tirelessly to go in and ensure the ground is laid for sales now, but also sales in the future. And it's that complement of domestic and international growth that we need both.
We certainly need
for
both.
U.S. dairy to be thriving.
We certainly need both. And you can't look one direction and ignore the other, because we certainly need both and have to make sure we're putting our eggs in all baskets, right?
It's one of the reasons we've talked increasingly about, as you look at the Checkoff family, this incredible federation of states and regions, the strength and unique insight that network brings. But then you look at US DEC and some of the other affiliated organizations we're working with. It really is a comprehensive enterprise. That was probably another turning point in 25 was by the end of this 3-year plan, 23, 24, 25, the goal was to have the enterprise working together in lockstep, recognizing our respective roles. And I think we've seen that improve quite a bit.
We often in Checkoff talk about trust. And when we're in the boardroom, we talk about trust, and that trust with consumers, that trust with farmers. Tell me a little bit about how the Checkoff investments that we had in 2025 helped to build that trust.
We stay true to the fundamental of science. It is truly our foundation. but it's one piece of it, because science doesn't always sell, right? It's critical to credibility, but you need transparency, you need innovation, you need to meet consumers where they are. And I think it takes each piece in play to ultimately connect with the consumer. Relevance maybe is the last piece in that lineup. So I think you've got staff who understand that and are expert in each piece along that chain. And we've got programs that have been designed very specifically to go from science to consumer marketplace in a way that's relevant. I'd also say, Marilyn, the use of third-party voices. And that third party can be a physician who's talking to other physicians, bringing that credibility, a chef, a teacher, a neighbor. People want to talk to people like themselves, and they trust that. Yeah.
Science has always been something that you have focused on. So when you look at the science, what is it that really excites you the most?
It is the mechanism by which dairy will diversify. And what the science team here, the National Dairy Council, has done in their work with the universities across the country is to imagine what else, and to explore dairy's role not just in child health, which is well established, or not just in sport performance and growth, but new areas. Last couple of years, we've really doubled down in not just the important role dairy plays in child's physical development, but increasingly in mental and cognitive development. We've had, based on that science, we in the states and regions in USDEC, we took it global, pursued a program called the First 1,000 Days. Unprecedented collaboration across the system. We invested in bringing the messaging to the consumer marketplace, to the health professional audiences, to really let people know dairy's role in that first 1,000 days, from prenatal to age 2, the role we play in mental development. We have components. I want to say there are 14 essential nutrients for cognitive development of a child's brain. And we have maybe 7 of those 14, including iodine. And it's really resonated with pediatricians, with pediatric caregivers. Our states and regions have been amazing in terms of taking that messaging on the road and calling on physician offices. So we're laying ground. And for me, by being so essential in that first phase in life, dairy can play across the lifespan from there.
It's so exciting, and that's necessary. It doesn't matter where you live. And you mentioned USDEC taking it on the road, and I can personally attest to that. Sitting in a meeting with another country, and we mentioned the First 1,000 Days project that we have, and the science behind that, and everybody was always, we'd like more information on that. That's something our consumers need in this country. So, very important for us.
Absolutely.
So when you look ahead at 26, what is so exciting to you?
Ooh, I feel like the ground's been laid. And it really was as a result of both the 2020 to 2022 and the 23 to 25 plans. That, again, all laid ground for where we are today. So let's get in market. Let's get dairy in front of the right decision makers, whether that's health or environmental or end consumer. Mm-hmm. I think we are primed to answer that call.
Food is medicine, right?
You got
it's a big deal.
You got it. And the science continues to support that. I had a meeting with Eve Pollitt from staff, who's been responsible for that milk molecule work. High potential molecules that have strong science behind them that can help us build out the next 10-year pipeline, right? We've been working against a current pipeline. This one will lay ground for years to come in terms of innovation, new claims, new benefits to people. Again, you talk about food as medicine. It's the magic of those molecules combined with the fat that really deliver for consumers' health.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So just for those who aren't familiar with milk molecule, what are you referring to?
So that is an amazing, what I would call discovery project. We worked through a university, and it started with a deep analysis of the composition of fluid milk. Samples from across the country were collected and analyzed, understanding certainly the macro and micronutrient composition, but what else? What else is within this product that makes it as critically important a nutrition source as it is? That study revealed over 6,000 molecules, previously unknown molecules. That work was then married up with artificial intelligence, other learning capabilities, married with nutrition science, to understand sort of the state of the science on each of those molecules and where opportunities may be for contributing to people's health. It's now been prioritized. It's been embedded in a workable database that now farmers and farmer-owned entities have access to begin to explore what's possible for new product development, for new claims opportunities, for new messaging. And in my mind, it reinforces our ability to talk about just the magic of our whole products, milk, cheese, yogurt, but also begin to explore how we extract those molecules, concentrate them, and play, we've talked about this food as medicine movement. I think this gives us the ability to customize, personalize, and play in that space.
That's incredible. A little bit further than what is it, 9 essential vitamins and minerals.
Exactly. And isn't it, here's this, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of year-old product that has been consumed by people for health and other reasons. And we just keep discovering more.
More value.
More value, and the interaction between those components and compounds is really what makes dairy different. I think it played out in the dietary guidelines.
Oh, wow. What other strategies or priorities or focus areas do we have at DMI?
Now is our time to go back and recapture space at retail. So there's a really important conversation happening here at DMI with the states and regions, with MilkPEP, to go get space back on shelf. And it's actually not just in the dairy case, but it's across the store. I remember, this goes back early in my career here, hearing a figure that Coca-Cola and the soda industry prided themselves on having 26 touch points in the store. That should be our vision. We should be able to identify dairy in the snacking aisle, in cereal, in the ambient beverage aisle, in the supplement aisle, right? All of that is made possible by a consumer who wants it, science that supports sort of the diversification of our category and claims, and an industry who's got $12 billion in new infrastructure and are looking for what's next. They too want to grow the category. So I'm excited about some work we're going to do at retail, continued work at food service, some new partners. We're going to work hand in glove with the states and regions and be far more, I would say, category assertive. So think coffee, right? Instead of a single partner, we're going to diversify our coffee partners across the country and just drive innovation and growth through that segment.
What are some other areas that consumers, how are we staying relevant with a very unique consumer than it was 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think absolutely it's protein. And, again, I take pride in what your science investment has accomplished. We've been working on this protein proposition for a decade, for a long time, readying the science and or the industry to be ready to pounce on that opportunity. You know, fiber is not natural to our product, but it is absolutely a close second in terms of what consumers are looking for. So I know manufacturers in the sector are looking at how to bring that forward. You know, fat is the other component that we all have our eyes on. You know, as you and I have talked about, fat and protein move together, and we do have a lot of fat that we need to clear. And so between US DEC looking at exports and our domestic markets, higher fat items at food service, consumers want it. They want the mouthfeel. The retail numbers show that consumers have already made that switch. When you look at whole milk being 48 to 50% of the fluid category, they're spending their dollars on taste, right?
Yeah.
So that's
Right.
the other area that, you know, we'll be pursuing.
Yeah. So when you think about a year from now, where do you hope we are? Where do you want us to be in a year from now?
You know, it's, I think given production, what we've seen in terms of production growth, the goal is always to keep demand ahead of production. And we've had some softness. We've got some consumer caution. The retail numbers definitely show that, you know, they're not spending dollars out of the home. And when they are spending dollars for home eating, maybe a little bit of a decline there in terms of their willingness to spend too much, cutting back a little bit. Portion size, part of that is GLP-1 as well, right? As growing number of people in the marketplace are on those diet drugs. So it's ensuring that we're putting the right products in the marketplace that in the right size and form that consumers are ready to buy and spend their precious dollars on. It's looking at attracting talent to the category. Yes, on the food science and R&D side, but even beyond that, how do we make dairy across all aspects of the business an attractive career for people who are in it today, but people who choose to join the industry in the future. So got a lot going on, but the bottom line in my mind is it's all about being a growth category, a modern, attractive dairy industry that starts with farmers, and hopefully the rest of us bring that to life through the rest of the chain.
You know, you mentioned supply demand, you mentioned keeping pace, and you know, my mind goes to the boom in processing that we've had. So maybe give us a top line of some of that that we're anticipating in the next year or so.
It is astounding, and it's not going to stop here. I mean, that's the bottom line. I feel like when we first started talking about the processing boom, I think the calculation was at about $7 billion of investment. We're now talking $11-12 billion in investment. And frankly, if you look at the map, it's across the entire country. It is across all dairy sectors. So this is where we're about to go into our third year of checkoff outreach. Again, this is where the B2B, the business to business model of our business has us knocking on doors, sharing the science, developing tools and resources that processors of all sectors, all sizes, from vertically integrated farm to, you know, large scale proprietaries.
It's not all traditional, right? It's not, it's not all going in a gallon jug. It's ingredients, it's new products that our science team have helped to develop. So
absolutely,
very exciting to see some of this.
And startups.
Yeah,
there's a lot of opportunity to invest in dairy and a lot of startup opportunities. You know, one of the things on the R&D front we've been talking about is there the infrastructure, like the pilot plant infrastructure to support new companies coming into the business? How do we make sure that as an industry, we're prepared to support the growth that we know we can fulfill through this $12 billion and more?
You know, you often will talk about farmers' fingerprints And I often hear that phrase, whether you're presenting at a meeting or even in the boardroom. What do you mean by farmers' fingerprints?
Marilyn, this goes back to when I was asked to step into this role. And my commitment to you personally and to the board fully to listen. Communication is a really important skill, and listening in my mind is the number one. And so, it was 100 days on the road, meeting with farmers, understanding what's on their mind, their perceptions of checkoff, taking it all in, and working with the staff here nationally and locally to ensure we were listening, that we had a plan that reflected that input. Fast forward a number of years, and that priority remains. It's about hearing from farmers, and increasingly farmers, and you and I have talked about this, farmers who are not on our boards, investors who are not on our boards. That's how I think about it. Learning the business through their eyes, understanding their current perceptions and where they may have misinformation. And again, coming back and reflecting that input. It might not be exactly, but it's in its entirety, to ensure we've got a plan that farmers feel they own, they understand. If they don't see transparency or understand a certain aspect of it, there is not a farmer in this country who shouldn't feel like they can pick up the phone and call me or you or somebody to get an answer to their question. So that's what fingerprints are to me.
Very good. Love that. Love that. And I would say you've done that so well in the past years, and each year I think your Rolodex of farmers just continues to grow. You visit farms in nearly every time you're going to a meeting, you're visiting a farm somewhere.
Well, that's the plan. Any market I go into for a presentation or a conference or a co-op meeting, whatever it may be, I wanna visit with farmers.
Did you ever see yourself from city girl in suburban Chicago, or I guess not city girl, but suburban girl?
Yeah.
Hitting the farms?
You and I have talked about this, right? I mean, I was far from it. Agency background, worked in pharmaceutical and health and wellness. I didn't imagine it, but what a privilege it is to work for farmers. Again, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. There is a authenticity to that ownership relationship that is unlike anything I've experienced. And just the investment, the purposeful nature with which you all wake up every day. It is inspiring. I think it keeps me and many others wanting to work in this segment. So I never imagined it. Thank you.
Do it well.
Appreciate
Do
it.
it well.
Thank you.
So send you in another direction.
Okay.
What's your favorite part of the job, of what you do?
It is, it starts with the people, I would say, farmers first. And I talk about the diversity of our farmer foundation here. Every farmer I have met is a new experience, is a nuanced perspective, is a nuanced operation, size, scale, geography, technology, and that to me is fascinating. But I can say it about my colleagues here at DMI and across the country in Checkoff. What a privilege to work with all of them and the experiences each of them bring to the category. And I would then say, given my commitment to work with and through the chain, the Innovation Center, working with leaders across this industry, amazing. Yes, just the commitment, the purpose, the shared vision of potential for U.S. dairy. So it starts with the people. And then I would just say it's working for a product that I believe in so deeply. Yeah, I see it in my own family. There's something about that how tangible dairy is, and how real it is in our lives. When I started working for Checkoff 20 years ago, my kids were little, they were in school, and they'd come home and talk about school milk. So, I mean, there just was like a practical nature to this work that, again, has made it just so fulfilling. And I think our opportunities are endless, right? This portfolio will continue to expand and grow and fill people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my favorite part.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Why don't you reflect a little bit? I mean, anything on 25, 26, and what are you most proud of?
It's a team. It really is a team, and we have an incredible team of farmers that are working. I love the fact that the board is engaged. I don't feel like, often you hear the term rubber stamping. I don't feel like our board does that. They want to know the ins and outs of what we're talking about. They ask the tough questions, and I like that. I think that's good. Personally, I've been getting more involved in international work, and I think 26 will be exciting. I'm looking forward to that. Having the first farmer seat on the International Dairy Federation from the U.S. Is exciting for me.
Amazing.
But I also feel like it's a big role. It's a big responsibility. And how can I best carry the U.S. voice in that area?
We've talked about, though, you've got to show up. You've got to be a part of the conversation. And I don't think, although we are a global industry and there's so much commonality across the world when you look at dairy, but there are also some really important distinctions in U.S. dairy that we need to make sure the U.S. shows up. So I know it's a lot of travel, it's a lot of long days and nights, but thank you for doing what you do.
Well, we have to define ourselves, right? And I think every country deserves that right. It's not just the U.S. that should define themselves. Every country should be able to define themselves and what they need in their dairy industry. So, it's about making sure that we all have that opportunity. But you're right. If we don't show up as the U.S. dairy industry, someone else will tell our story.
Absolutely.
So,
well, and then you expand that to the broader food system
Yeah.
discussion. And that really is, I was thinking about your export work, your international work, and how that's goal number 3 in this year's plan is our positioning as a category within the broader food system discussion. And farmers' voices are so important to sort of setting the record straight and ensuring that dairy stays central to it. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. It's a good team. We're a good team.
Thanks for listening to Your Dairy Checkoff Podcast. Want to hear more about how your checkoff is making every drop count? Head over to dairycheckoff.com or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.